Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com. This is another video about the MercedUI library. And I've added some more pieces to this library and I'm very excited with the end result. Okay, so basically last I left off we had some functions for mapping templates to the DOM, making those map templates updatable and reactive. We had functions. We created actually a function that allows you to make a web component much simpler without having to worry about all the boilerplate of creating web components. The only thing that was really missing was just trying to make a way, create a structure that is sort of very sort of reacty in the sense that you update, you can have a set state function, and technically the bind data function does that, but I wanted to make it even more familiar feeling and also more robust, and then actually connect that pattern directly to the web component. So that way you're building a standard browser API web component, but still having sort of the familiar pattern. Because technically the way the web component API is built is it has a callback called attribute changed callback that is called whenever certain attributes are changed. So not prop, so basically you'd have to change the attributes, trigger changes in the attributes of the element, but that's not always the case. Okay, when you've worked with like React, Vue, or Angular, it's not always necessarily a prop change. It could be just some sort of internal piece of data that triggers a re-rendering. Okay, and I didn't really find something that was built in. You can still use that part of the API. So basically, the way I designed the component constructors in these functions is that there's strings you can just put in there. They get interpolated into those parts of the component, so that way you can customize it to your heart's content. But what I did is I built a class called SiteBuilder. Okay, so first we're gonna learn how to use SiteBuilder. And SiteBuilder lets you create sort of a kind of like map to DOM, a template that renders to the DOM, that then updates whenever you update a store of data called the store. So first let's kind of go over it. Like, you can kind of see some of the code and how it's going to be in a second, but actually we'll just use this example. So I'm going to comment this out for a moment, and we're going to comment this out for a moment. So essentially the way this new SiteBuilder class works is essentially you create a new instance of SiteBuilder in a variable, and it takes three parameters. It takes the target, which is the target element that you want to render it to. So here we have a div, I think. Yep, we have a div that has the ID of test. So we're binding this instance of SiteBuilder to that DOM element. So what's going to happen is it's always just going to render its template to that DOM element. Okay, and then we pass it an object. This object is referred to as the store. Okay, so you can think of it state in React, or data, the data property in Vue. I don't think they have a real name for it in Angular or Svelte, and I think they just call it state again inside Stencil. But the idea is that when this data changes, this template will re-render. Okay, so there's a target, and instead of just passing in a template, and this has to do just with the way interpolation works, also to give you extra flexibility in how you create your template instead of just passing in a static string, you pass in a builder function. And the idea is that this builder function will return the template string. So that's what I have here, my builder function. And basically what happens is that every time that builder function will run within the SiteBuilder instance, it's going to pass in the store. So it'll pass in this object. So as this object changes, you'll have access to the data. So in that case, you can interpolate that data inside your template. So in this case, I'm assuming that my store is going to have a property called hello. I interpolate it, and it's in there. Okay, so we're going to pass that in. We'll save that. Let's go back over here where I have this open. Let's refresh. Okay, you see hello world. Okay, and that's coming from the SiteBuilder instance. So if I go over here, so when we go to the div, see, it's just rendering that to the DOM. Okay, there's no shadow DOM with the SiteBuilder when you're using it freestanding way. Okay, well, you'll see when I have the SiteBuilder built into a component, it will have a shadow DOM, just so you're aware. Okay, cool. So that's the site builder. But now the benefit of of using the site builder, because technically I could have just done that with some of the other functions I've created in the past. The benefit is having sort of reactivity. So the way it works is that technically that site builder, which again we saved in the variable called test, has a method called UpdateStore. And what UpdateStore does is that you pass it in a new object, which then replaces store. So this becomes the new store. So now the new store still has a property called hello, but now it says goodbye. And once you pass in the new store, it then reruns the builder targeting the template, targeting the target. So then essentially just re-renders that template to the target with the new data. Save. So let's refresh. So now that I've uncommented out that code, so now if I click this code, it's going to run a function that then runs that update. Nope, maybe I didn't need to save it. Did I save? Yeah, I did save. Did I delete it from here? Button click goodbye. Click me. Did work earlier, so it should still be working. Let's just walk through this UI. No. Target hello. Goodbye. Test update hello. So it should update the hello property to goodbye. So when I click the button, it should change this to goodbye. Okay. Let me hit refresh again. There we go. Click me. Oh, yep, there it works. Cool. Okay, so now you've made it really easy to do reactive data. So basically, you never have to recreate the template. You can just keep passing in a new store, and then that store will just continue populating that template with the new data. And that builder function, all it has to do is return a string with your template. How it constructs that string can be as complicated as you want within the function, and you have access to the store within the entire function. So really, you can go hog wild with how you construct your how your builder function works. Okay, I mean, I kept it simple in this example. My builder function just literally returned, an h1, but then you have things like the helper function in the library mapped to string, where you can map an array. So basically, if you also had, API data that was stored somewhere, you could pull that API data, use the map to string function, and construct your template that way. So that way you're not rewriting all the iteration. However you want to do it, or you can just literally do any kind of custom code you want. In there, you're not limited at all. You just have to return a template string at the end of that function. And you just have to know that, and the data you have, any custom data you have access to will be coming from the store. But again, you can use any global data, refer to any global data you want. Okay, the encapsulation is fairly limited, which is nice. Cool. Now let's see here. So now the only issues with SiteBuilder in that case is that, one, I can't use this custom HTML tag. Like, it would be nice to be able to use custom HTML tags like this to plop in that. Okay, the reason being is then I can just kind of decide where it is. I don't have to pre-plan where these elements that it's linked to are. And then there's also the possibility that this div maybe gets destroyed at some point, which means that SiteBuilder becomes dead because the target it's attached to is gone. So, how could I include the encapsulation? We already kind of had a way to do that with the web components. So again, we had, we had a function to create a basic web component, which was makeComponent. The only issue with makeComponent is that it creates a static component. Okay, there's no sort of reactive updating inherent to it. You could build it in. It has the capabilities for you to build that in, but not super easy. You have to really understand sort of how the API works to use some of its other properties. But basically, I mean, at its simplest, you could create a web component by passing in an object. You always have to pass in a prefix because of the naming conventions inside the API. So prefix test, the name of the component. These got to be strings. Test component, and then you just pass in a string as a template. So template h1 hello world. Cool. save. So now if I save this, I could just, that's just going to create a component, add it to the component registry into the browser, so that way I can use it in my normal HTML. Okay, that's really easy. If you've seen the code you normally have to do to build out a component, so let me actually just show it to you, because I just think it gets the point across of how nice that is. So let me go to one of the components that are built into this thing. Here we go. No, where are they? Here we go, Merced card. So this is all one component. So this is literally all the code for one component. Okay, and it's a very simple card component. Okay, so you save yourself a lot of that boilerplate. Okay, that function really just kind of gets what you need to make the component work your way and does everything else for you, which is what I'm very happy with in the design of that function. The only problem is it doesn't have really an easy way to make it reactive. So if I were to use that here, I'll put it above the button so we can see that it works. So test comp, test comp. Okay, so we save it and then we hit refresh, and there it is. See, it works. Okay, so I can create components really easy. So if I'm just creating like a static UI element, like a nav bar or something like that, this is a great way to do it. Okay, it's a really easy, not super syntaxy way of doing it. But sometimes you do want it to be reactive. And the site builder is reactive, but I just would like a tiny bit more encapsulation. So what I did is I combined the two, in the sense that I created a version of the makeComponent function that makes a component that has a site builder linked into it, that uses the target of its own shadow DOM. So that way, essentially the component renders, and then that builder will just build out the template into the shadow DOM of that particular instance of the component. Yay! Okay, and again, if you don't understand any of that, it doesn't matter, as long as it works for you to build your UI. Well, let's show you how that works. So I want to get rid of this. Okay, so essentially it works just like the previous function, so that makeComponent function. The only difference, instead of passing in a string as a template, you're going to pass in a builder function. So I'm passing in the same exact builder function as before over here, because just like before, and you pass in a store, except the store has to be passed in a string. Keep that in mind. It will error if you just pass in an object. So just make sure you put in your quotation marks around your initial store object. The reason is because I use a lot of string interpolation in this library, and string evaluation and whatnot to get these effects without having to get too. I don't want to, because again, my whole goal was to make this where you can do a lot of that stuff without necessarily having to go run a live web server every time you want to test it out, without needing all this complex Webpack buildup. You can just literally load in the library, build in components, plop them into your HTML, and life is good. Okay, so essentially now you have this. Yay, makeLiveComponent. So this creates a component called test life. Every time the template's rendered, it uses this builder function that will render the template and then bind it to its own shadow DOM. Okay? Okay, the shadow DOM is going to be there by default in these two functions, makeComponent and makeLiveComponent. Okay, why did I do that? Because one, it's better encapsulation, and two, I wanted to avoid complexity and giving you, just making it, the configuration object have way too many options, so that way you can tinker it. If you really needed to not have a shadow DOM, then you'll just have to kind of create your own component, or you can just use a site builder and there's no shadow DOM. Okay. Okay, and then, or you can create your own component and build a site builder into it. However you want to do it. Okay, store. Okay, and then I put in the store, and then yeah, that works. Okay. So now if I go back over here, okay, see, there's my component, test life, made with the test, made with a makeLiveComponent function. So now if I refresh, there it is below the click me. Now what we're going to do is we're going to add another button to show you reactivity. Control C. But I'm going to change the goodbye function. So let's see here, save. Okay. So see, it still has this. It's right now. It's using the update store function of. And actually, what we're gonna do, we're gonna copy it. Okay, so it's gonna use the update store function of hello goodbye. Okay, what I want to do is actually use the update store function of this instance of the component. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give this instance an ID. So ID, live component. So there's the ID. Save. And what this is going to do is that it's going to take the document. So we first have to grab the element document dot get element by ID test or live comp. So that grabs the element, and that element has a property called life because it's a live component. It's alive. So we're gonna access its life, and inside, and really what the life is, it's the SiteBuilder component. It's the SiteBuilder instance inside of the element, which we need to access to get to the update store property. The update store method. So now we can update the store, and that'll re-render the component. Cool. So that should do that. Let's see. Okay, so if I hit refresh, then they both disappear. Interesting. Let's take a look. Let's examine what we did. We broke it. Okay. Oh, first let's take a look at the console. I'm sure the console's telling me something. Oh, yeah, that's right. Goodbye 2. Save. And then I need to change this in here. Goodbye 2. Save. Okay. There we go. So let's click here. Did I relabel it wrong? Goodbye 2. Which one did I label goodbye to? App.js. Why did it change that one? Or did I say they put them in the wrong order? Button on click. This is ID test. Yeah, that should be the first one made by the. Goodbye 2. Why did the second button? Interesting. Let's re-examine that. Something didn't quite work the way I expected it to. Weird. Okay, let's reassess goodbye 2. Document.get element by ID live comp live.updateStore hello goodbye. Let's take a look at the Okay, fixed. It was just a minor character I had to fix in the actual library itself. So now it works. So now if I click this button, there it goes. So see, when I run the update function, every instance of using the SiteBuilder has its own update store function, and then when that gets triggered again, it just causes a re-render. But in this case, I'm using it, and I'm able to use the function there. I'm able to use it as its own HTML tag. So now you have that sort of reactive set state type pattern, but built into a standard web component, making it really fun to use. And I think that's pretty cool. And then you have the lifestyle functions, because the web component API already naturally has connected callback, disconnected callback, and all those different lifecycle functions, which you're able to make use of. How do you do that? Read the API. Essentially, you're just putting in strings. So if I wanted to add code to the connected callback, I would just write connected, and then here I pass a string with any code I want to add to that callback. And then if I wanted to use the other callbacks, literally any code that you want sort of outside of the constructor, other than the connected callback, you would just pass in as a string. So you could add extra methods to your component. You could use the other two callbacks, connected callback, update change. The only other one is observe. The reason is in the constructor you would have to add a line to observe attributes if you want to take advantage of the observe attributes feature of web components. So this injects that line into the constructor. So you would just put that line of code as a string into there, it puts it into the constructor, and then you can then use the attribute change callback here. So if you're familiar with web components, that should mean something to you. If you're not familiar with that aspect of the API, don't worry about it. Just the way it works inherently right now does what you need it to do. Okay, now the only thing that you currently don't have access to necessarily is this whole concept of props, okay? But you do. Okay, so if I wanted to use props, okay, it is going to be a little bit more tricky. I'm trying to think how else. Because right now you'd have to basically put that into the code. Although, I think it was a good way to sort of build into the props without having to use sort of the attribute aspects of the web component, just because it is a verbose way of doing it. But I'll think about that, and if I can figure that out, we'll add that into the library and I will make another video. So I'll see you guys later on. But the cool thing here is you have makeLiveComponent, so you can now make a standard web component that has sort of that reactive ability, and then you have the SiteBuilder, which, you know, if you don't necessarily need an HTML tag, you can create reactive templates that render to a target element on the DOM. Nice. I'll see you guys later on.